Hey America! Election season is back, and you know what that means? Politicians making promises. It's like a giant yard sale where everything is free, until you get the bill. And guess what's always a hot topic? You got it? Taxes. Who pays what? How much? And where does it all go? These are the questions that keep us up at night, besides wondering if that weird noise in the attic is a raccoon or a possum. Spoiler alert, it's probably both. This time around, one candidate is making a splash with a bold proposal. No more taxes on tips. That's right, folks. You heard it here first. But hold your horses, because nothing is ever that simple. Let's dive into the details and see what's really going on. Former President Donald Trump, never one to shy away from the spotlight, has thrown his hat into the ring. And this time, he's got his eyes on your tips. That's right, those hard-earned gratuities you get for serving up smiles and cocktails could be getting a tax break. Now, before you go celebrating with a celebratory lap dance, for those legally allowed, of course, let's break down what this actually means. See, right now, when you work in a job where you get tips, like being a bartender, a server, or even a hairstylist, you have to pay taxes on those tips, just like you do on your regular wages. Trump's proposal would change that, putting more money back in the pockets of folks who work hard for their money. But is it really that simple? Let's find out. Okay, so Trump wants to eliminate taxes on tips. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Well, the devil, as they say, is in the details. The specifics of how this plan would be implemented are still a bit murky. Would it involve changing the tax code? Would there be income limits or other restrictions? These are all questions that would need to be answered. One possibility is that tipped workers would no longer have to report their tips as income on their tax returns. This would simplify the tax filing process for millions of Americans. However, it could also create opportunities for tax avoidance, as it would be more difficult for the IRS to track tip income. Another option would be to create a new tax credit specifically for tipped workers. This credit could offset the taxes owed on tip income, effectively eliminating the tax burden. This approach might be more complex to administer, but it could provide a more targeted way to benefit tipped workers. So, who stands to gain the most from Trump's tax cut proposal? Well, the obvious winners are the millions of Americans who rely on tips to make ends meet. We're talking about your friendly neighborhood bartenders, your tireless servers, your hairstylists, your hard-working valets, the backbone of the service industry. For these folks, every penny counts, and eliminating taxes on tips could mean a significant boost to their take-home pay. Imagine what an extra $100 or $200 a month could do for a struggling family. But what about the potential downsides? Critics argue that this tax cut would primarily benefit those at the lower end of the income spectrum, while doing little to help middle-class and higher-income earners. Some even argue that it could lead to job losses, as businesses might be less inclined to hire additional staff if they know they won't be able to offset those costs with tax deductions. Only time will tell what the true impact of this proposal will be. Section 5. The economy's tightrope walk. Balancing act or high wire act. Now, let's talk about the big picture. The economy. Whenever a politician starts tinkering with the tax code, it's like a chimpanzee juggling chainsaws. Exciting, but potentially very messy. Proponents of the tax cut argue that it would stimulate the economy by putting more money in people's pockets. The theory is that when people have more disposable income, they tend to spend it, which boosts businesses and creates jobs. It's a classic trickle-down economics argument. However, opponents argue that this is a short-sighted approach that could actually harm the economy in the long run. They point out that cutting taxes also means cutting government revenue, which could lead to cuts in essential services or an increase in the national debt. And let's be honest, the national debt is already about as pretty as a hairless cat. So, is this tax cut a good idea for the economy? It's a gamble, just like trying to eat a whole hot dog in one bite. It might work out, or it might leave a big mess. Section 6. Government spending. Less money, more problems? Here's the thing about government spending. It's kind of like your Uncle Gary at a buffet. It never seems to stop, and you're left wondering where it all goes. Now, when you cut taxes, the government has less money to play with. That means something's gotta give. Will it be education, healthcare, infrastructure? Or maybe they'll just stop buying those tiny toiletries for Air Force One. Seriously, who needs travel-size shampoo when you're the leader of the free world? The truth is, cutting taxes without cutting spending is like trying to lose weight by eating more cake. It just doesn't add up. So, if Trump's tax cut proposal becomes a reality, we need to be prepared for some tough choices about government spending. And let's be honest, the government isn't exactly known for making tough choices. Section 7. Ripples in the water. How other jobs might be affected. Okay, so we've talked about how this tax cut could affect tipped workers and the government. But what about everyone else? Well, like throwing a rock into a pond, this policy could create ripples that extend far beyond the initial splash. For example, some experts believe that eliminating taxes on tips could lead to higher wages for all workers in the service industry. The logic is that if tipped workers are taking home more money, businesses will need to offer higher wages to attract and retain non-tipped employees. Makes sense, right? On the other hand, some worry that this move could actually lead to job losses in other sectors. If the government is forced to cut spending, it could mean layoffs in areas like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. And if people are spending more money on dining out and other services, they might have less money to spend on other goods and services, potentially hurting those industries. The bottom line is that it's impossible to predict with certainty how this policy will impact the broader job market. It's a complex issue with a lot of moving parts. Section 8. What should tipped workers do? All right, folks, let's get down to brass tacks. What does all this mean for you, the hardworking folks who rely on tips to pay the bills? Well, the first thing to remember is that this proposal is far from a done deal. It's still just an idea being tossed around by politicians. That being said, it's never a bad idea to be prepared. If you're a tipped worker, now might be a good time to start thinking about how this potential change could affect your personal finances. Would you have more money to save or invest? Could you finally afford that trip to Disneyland you've been promising your kids? It's also important to stay informed. Keep an eye on the news and follow the political debates to see what's being said about this proposal. The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to make informed decisions about your financial future. Section 9. A friendly reminder. Get professional advice. Okay, folks, before we wrap things up, I want to make one thing perfectly clear. I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. In fact, I'm not even a real person. I'm just a bunch of words on a screen, pretending to be a British comedian who knows a thing or two about American politics. So, if you're looking for real financial advice, please, for the love of all that is holy, talk to a professional. They can help you understand the potential implications of this tax proposal and how it might affect your personal situation. Remember, when it comes to your money, it's always better to be safe than sorry. And that's the end of the show.